So it's day 2 of Web Summit 2015, and I'm joined by John Collison, the co-founder of the online payments firm Stripe, who's just stepped off stage a few minutes ago after giving his keynote this morning. John, thanks very much for giving us a bit of your time. I suppose it's a year since we spoke to you last. Give us an update as to where Stripe is by numbers at this stage.
Yeah, so now we've been growing. We've been launching in more countries. We actually just announced that today we started inviting businesses in Portugal and Brazil to start using Stripe. Those are the 2 countries we've opened most recently. And we've also been rolling out more products. So we released a new version of Stripe Connect, which is our product for mobile marketplaces. And we announced Stripe Relay, which is a product to make buying on mobile easier and to make building buy buttons easier.
You've also, I suppose, strengthened and deepened your leadership team in the last year. Tell us a bit about that.
Oh yeah, that's right. So we hired a COO. I think that was actually slightly before the summit last year, Claire Hughes-Johnson, who's actually speaking tomorrow on the Money stage, and we have an incoming CFO, Will Gabrick.
As you say, you recently launched the Relay button, or the Relay facility, which allows the use of buy buttons. Is this where you see the future, that it's more about social commerce, where people can buy through social networks, and less about trying to help people, businesses who have websites, to sell through them? Is mobile and social, that's the future, is it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the general case, like the reason we started Stripe was that we thought selling online was too hard. And it was too hard in lots of ways, right? You know, it was hard to get up and running. You were dealing with all these this merchant bank paperwork. It didn't work well for the internet. You were writing too much code. And say in the case of mobile commerce, it was just too hard to actually buy something from a merchant. And so, I mean, you know yourself, when you're typing in all these details, on your phone, that's really difficult. And so, our vision of how this should play out is you can have a buy button directly within an app. You just tap it and the thing's on its way to you. We think that's a really nice experience. There's a lot of underlying infrastructure that needs to happen to make that possible. And so that's what Relay provides. It's sort of the fabric or the infrastructure to make mobile buying really seamless.
And of course, you've also partnered with Apple and with Visa and Alibaba and other big names like that. How's all that going, that side of it?
Yeah, that's right. So in the past year, we've seen, obviously Apple Pay has launched and now is expanding. It launched in the UK fairly recently. Google announcing Android Pay. Again, I think these are all more efforts that we're really excited about to make commerce online easier. It's still the case that me just giving you €1 is much easier than doing anything online. That shouldn't be the case, right? And for the case of, say, Apple Pay and Android Pay, they're making it so that you don't have to type in all your details. It's not this laborious process to buy something on a phone. You can just tap once and you're done.
You mentioned this morning on stage, I think, that even the US presidential candidates in the presidency race, some of them are using your products.
That's right, Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, and a few others are using Stripe to accept donations. Obviously, this is a big thing in the US elections, and there's still, despite all the attention it's getting, there's still a year to go until the elections in the US. I think for them, they are building out a huge amount of donation infrastructure and building out these campaigns very quickly. They need to, be able to move fast and kind of create donation infrastructure sort of overnight, and so Stripe was a good fit for them.
Obviously your business is all about making payments easier, but is there a point at which it becomes too easy to buy something that you have to be careful, I suppose, not to cross that line where people can be fooled into maybe making a purchase that they didn't intend to make? Yeah,
I think there's 2 sides to it, right? There's the intrinsic difficulty of making a purchase, which is the fact that this is a big commitment and I'm spending €50, and then there's the kind of unnecessary complexity that, one side aside I want to buy something, then it should be really easy. And I think if you go, if you look at how it works in shops, right? You go in, you put your card in the reader, you enter the code and you're done. I don't think anyone is off, I don't think that causes too much commerce or too much spending. I think it's just, the way it should be. But then again, if you compare it to online, you're getting redirected to verified by Visa and you're going through all these, what feels like hoops. That makes it harder for businesses to trade online, and I think it makes it harder for us as consumers and, waste our time, and especially again on phones. And so we're not too worried. I agree that you don't want to be, encouraging a world where people are buying stuff that they don't need, but we're so far away from that right now.
In terms of the core business, I suppose that's your main focus, but are you starting to look a little bit beyond that yet, or is it too early to look at new areas that you could move into?
I mean, we are hyper-focused on commerce, and we talk about Stripe, we want to increase the GDP of the internet. I think that's actually, I mean, it's a kind of pithy way, but it's a good way to put it. We want to do stuff that enables more trade to happen online. That said, there's a whole bunch of different routes to making that happen. So even now, we're operating in many countries, we have different products going. If you're building a mobile marketplace like Halo or Deliveroo or Uber or one of those, it's very easy to do so on Stripe. Relay is more for e-commerce businesses, people who are selling physical goods, and so that mission will manifest itself in a bunch of different products.
A lot has happened in the last year around the whole area of security, a lot of issues around hacking and that kind of thing. Does the issue of security keep you awake at night?
I mean, obviously it's something you have to treat seriously, and for Stripe it's part of our DNA, and so, I mean, especially in online payments, right, where it's such a front and center topic. I think for us, the way we look at it is that, not only is it a challenge we have to deal with, but it's been a huge challenge traditionally for any businesses operating online. And so, one of the things that we did was we made tokenization a standard part of our product, so that anyone who's using Stripe, they are not collecting credit card details directly themselves. The credit card details go to Stripe and are securely stored by Stripe, and then people who are in the business of trading online, they can focus on their product and they don't need to think about storing credit card data.
What about your operations here in Ireland? You've opened an office here now. What are your plans? Do you expect to be able to grow that and add extra services through Dublin, through Ireland?
That's what we're hoping, yeah. So, I mean, if you look at our business over the past year, over the past 2 years, we've been growing our presence a lot in Europe. We now have a number of successful European companies using Stripe, like Deliveroo and Nutmeg and people like that. And so, we have started hiring people in Dublin. We also have some people in London, Berlin, Paris, and places like this. I think if you are looking to build an international service and international business, you can't do it from San Francisco, and no serious international company tries to do that. And so we're building up a presence here that will support things like local customer support and sales and kind of multilingual support, and we're starting to hire for that.
And what's the experience of being in Dublin like? Is it working out for you?
I mean, it's been great. I mean, if nothing else, it's obviously nice to have an excuse to come back home, but we've had a good time hiring, yeah.
You've raised 2 rounds of funding at large amounts of money since we spoke to you last year, and the valuation, I think, on the company at this stage is $5 billion, which is massive. I know you're going to say to me that you're not focused on valuations at this point, but you must never have imagined at the start, or did you imagine at the start, that you could reach this kind of size?
No, I don't think anyone imagines, that to begin with. When we started working on Stripe, there was this, this problem, this thread we started pulling on, where we knew this was much harder than it needed to be, and we started building out something to solve that. And I guess what we found was that the problem was much, much larger than we realized. And so, over the way, we've been lucky to kind of gather rounds of funding to help kind of build out the team, build out that product, because the returns come over a long time horizon. But, I mean, to echo what you were saying, we're not too focused on it. And in fact, the last round of funding we raised, kind of our primary intent there was that Visa and American Express both came on as investors, and they've been incredibly useful partners, given that obviously they're such a significant factor in the online payments landscape. And
do you think you'll be able to continue raising money privately like that, or do you think the spectre of an IPO is getting closer at this point?
Yeah, we don't really have any plans in that department, either for an IPO or future rounds of funding. We're concentrating on growing out the business, and we're very happy with the growth of the business, and so we've no plans in the fundraising department.
Obviously yourself and Patrick are very connected into what's going on in the Silicon Valley area, in the San Francisco area. What else is happening there that really catches your eye at the moment away from your own space?
That's a good question. I think, I mean, commerce is obviously, our wheelhouse and, where we spend a lot of time. But I think we're also seeing more broadly, if you look 5 or 10 years ago, a lot of the focus was on building purely software products. It was software as a service and things like that. And that was not just in Silicon Valley. You see a lot of examples of very successful companies all around doing that. In Ireland you have Intercom and Teamwork and folks like this. I think now what we're starting to see is, the software doing more real world services. And so, this is getting into the marketplaces, the sharing economy, stuff like this, where you have, transportation, people reimagining what it means, what that means on your phone, or accommodation, or all these kind of things. And so it's kind of moved from the virtual world into the physical world, and a lot of the startups we're seeing starting today are taking on some real world problem but bringing a fresh approach to it due to software.
What about the issue of a bubble some people saying there's a bubble, some other people just saying it's a little bit hot and there's a bit of froth at the top of the market at the moment. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think people like to spend time talking about this because it's the interesting thing to talk about. Funding tends to go in cycles and waves, and so prices go up and prices go down. I think fundamentally, Stripe is a bet on not only kind of commerce but on change, right? On the idea that we haven't it all figured out, the idea that there will be new services and kind of new companies coming along, and that actually not just from startups, but the idea that existing companies as well will have to change, their business models. Will be, offering different products in the internet world than maybe they do in the offline world. That's a bet that I'm kind of happy to make, and I think is relatively evergreen, regardless of the funding environment.
Finally, you and Patrick have both been very good supporters of Web Summit over the years. As you know, it's moving to Lisbon next year. Is that a good idea or a bad idea, do you think?
I mean, I think it's a pity regardless, in that I obviously love coming back to Ireland for it. I know less about the exact details of the move, maybe it's a rational decision, maybe not. But I think for me personally and for Ireland, it's obviously a pity, so got to start brushing up on the Portuguese.
You expect to be there next year?
Hopefully, yeah.
Excellent. Well, listen, John Collison, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Lots more news, I'm sure, coming from Stripe over the next year between now and the next Web Summit, which will be in Lisbon.